afternoon, and good whatever, wherever you are in this world. Welcome to another episode in the Soft and Systems Side to Sales, where myself, my good friend Jason, we talk all things sales from the soft side, the touch points, how you engage with people, and then the process itself and how you combine them. And we always talk a lot about the customer experience, but
Yeah.
today we're going to focus on the buyer experience. So we'll be back in a minute. So hello, Jason. First of all, congratulations on your ultra marathon the weekend. That
Thank you.
was an achievement, and considering the weather patterns that you had to battle through over the Wicklow Mountains, so it's I just wanted to make a note of that and recognize it. So congratulations.
Thank you. And it was one of the toughest things I've ever done. 32 miles or 52K. So I treat that as a good achievement in myself of mental awareness and mental strength just to keep going on. And I think that is one of the core things that when we were in sales and selling and putting yourself into someone else's shoes, it does make you think. Like I had 7.5 hours to think on my feet the other day, but it gives you such an awareness that you may even not have before. Like we're both into running and we're both into mountain running, and we'll probably both experience what it's like to have that just that head, that mindset, just so I'm going to keep going on, going to keep going on, I'm going to do it until I finish it. And once I finish, I'm going to be absolutely elated, high as a kite on endorphins. But it's also the achievement. So for today, we're talking about buying experiences, and that's as a salesperson, it's really good to understand the buyer and really good to understand it from their point of view, because they go onto all these training courses, they go into all these sales training courses to really understand what salespeople are like. So in the bigger organizations, they play games with the buyers, but with the salespeople. But really, as a buyer, we have to reflect into what the buyer actually does want specifically, and what they're actually going through. And there's lots of different facets what they're looking for into a company like ourselves, because we're out there all the time, we're knocking on doors, we're doing the same thing, but really to understand their experiences of us and what they want. Shay, let's break this out a little bit.
Yeah, and it has to be broken out, Jason, because I always say when I ask my clients when I'm workshopping this out, I said, where do you start adding value on the sales process? And they normally would say, well, look, when we get to sale, and I go, no, you start adding value to your target audience long before they're even they're a lead, and then when they're a lead to a prospect, then prospect to a customer, you have to start building that experience long before you get to sell. And the
Yeah.
way I describe that, Jason, number one is, and we'll come on to, I'll segue back to what you just said in a minute because it's very important. Like I talk about, well, if you want people to love what you do, you have to give them a reason to love what you do. And the first way to do that is to share and give your best knowledge for free on all your platforms that you share your content on.
Mm,
They see that you're a giver, right? You have to turn, you have a very short or very finite amount of touch points to go from someone who likes you to someone who can trust you,
yeah.
right? To be trustworthy. So you have to bring them on that journey. And that starts with giving, Jason. And then as you bring that down towards, well, now I'm giving it to my marketplace. Now you may do some lead magnets, and they may get into your email list, and then you start adding value to them, and then you get into the stage where you make a phone call to organize a meeting. That's when it goes from like your target audience value, your marketplace value, to one-on-one value, Jason.
Mhm.
So you have probably 3 to 4 touch points where you can go from being liked to be trustworthy, or the perception of trustworthy, to get an opportunity to get a sale. So it's so important, Jason, to actually build that. Go ahead.
So yeah, trustworthiness. So from the perception of a buyer, let's play devil's advocate here, because we have to reposition ourselves. I think, and from the buyers, I've asked loads and loads of buyers, and the people that I've worked with, is that they want transparency. They want really good communication, that what they're getting is 100% correct, not fabricated on the initial conversation that they have, but once they actually receive the product, is totally different. So they need to make sure that effective communications that they can provide, and it's clarity that builds trust, and also that connection as well, because people buy people and brands they like, trust, but also that they can connect with. Connection is really vital in
Yeah.
the buyer's process, to find out they're really good at what they do. They can educate me, as well as stuff that I didn't know about, stuff that's going on in our companies, and stuff that they can reflect on and look at. So they treat you as an expert.
That's it, Jason. And I always say, and again, when I ask my clients, what's the goal of sales? And they look at me with two heads and they go, to sell. And I go, no. Right. And they look confused. And I bring them on a bit of a journey. But the long and short of it, Jason, is your goal of sales is to build relationships, right? And then the consequence of building relationships with people who are interested and have a need for what you do is a sale. And it creates a win-win. But if you don't focus on the relationship first, Jason, right, a few things happen. You'll always have to go back to the lead generation, and that's the most costly sale in the game. When you focus on the relationship, you'll get repeat customers. When you do your work really, really well, so when you get the sale and then you prove that you're as good as you say you are, then a bit more, they can open up their network to you. But even if the people that are not interested in what you do, but you've built relationships with them, if you focus on that relationship and they see that you can add value to a certain cohort of people, they may open their network to you, Jason.
Yep.
But this is all, you go first, build that, I call it the trunk of the tree, and build that ecosystem of relationships where people see you as someone they can trust and do good work and add value and help their network as well. And that to me is the goal of sales.
Yeah, and this has happened on many occasions with myself. Like, delivered a course, and unbeknown, you've done a good job, or you think you've done a good job, because you asked them for a feedback form. And it happened a couple of times last year. All of a sudden, they referred me over to someone else. I didn't ask them to. They actually did it. And that gave me a whole chunk of business after that, because they made that connection and relationship. And they said, oh, you should be speaking to Jason because he did a great job. I'm probably barking up my own tree here, but I did a great job. I thought I did a great job. So they referred me over without me knowing to someone else, and they contacted me afterwards. It was a month or so later. And for me, obviously touched on the right points, but I built on that relationship before, and I did huge amounts of research for them. And I did a lot of customer service things in advance, so I can do my needs analysis to really find out how I needed to present on the 3 or 4 day workshop that I delivered. But then the after was that ripple effect. And I always talk about my ripple effect is how many more people that can be connected to you based on the relationship that you built. And as you say, the trunk, I call it the ripple effect, because I want to create that going on after I leave.
Exactly, it's the same thing, Jason.
Yep.
And then the other thing, that just to segue back to what you spoke about before, like when you're entering like the sales, when you're looking to build experiences, right? And the buying experience, yes, there's a process element, right? That you need to go step to step, but then the layer of the experience. And you have to remember, and this is where people don't fully get it, right? They only stick at the sort of the sales funnel, and from lead generation, get to sale, then go back to lead and stay in that cycle all the time. That's hard work, Jason, right? Really hard work, because it's the most costly sale in the game, going back to the very start of the funnel and generate demand and leads, right? But so here's the thing. When you're going through it, you have to be other people centered. Like, you have to understand that I see a magic hand coming back.
There is a hand, and I put it on mute. I'm actually on.
The joys of home offices, Jason.
The joys of home offices, and sometimes you just have to pivot, and sometimes you just have to get on with it. I think we've gone through the whole COVID thing many times in the past. You just have to laugh at it, and I think that's the point. Is that we do have to change things as we go along. And I know you wrote about it during the week, about just keep on pivoting and changing when a distraction happens like that. But when a distraction happens in through your buyer's experiences as well, you have to think about, well, what is it that I can do to adapt and change quickly to adjust to their needs as a way of satisfying their requirements and doing what we need to do. And again, it's based in the relationship. People change all the time, and relationships change all the time, and catching people at the right mood at the right time. I've caught people where they've just been very offish with me when I've been speaking to them, and then a day or week later they're in a different space, because you catch them at the right time when they're more intent for listening to you, and you have a great conversation.
Exactly. And that's what you have to be mindful, Jason, of their mood. And so the psychology element, and this is continuing on what we were talking about a minute ago before the distraction. Like, you have to be other people centered. They probably sometimes know more about your product than you do, because it's available to everyone. Like, we're in an age of information symmetry, right? Not asymmetry anymore. So your goal is not to sell them features and benefits. Your goal is to solve their problems. You can only do that by listening and learning about their pains and problems, so you can solve them, Jason, right? And then a big part of that is then demonstrating that you can, and you're the right person for this. But the psychological element is, Jason, that sometimes you could be getting false signals because you could be having a bad day.
Yep.
Right. So you can't take it personally. You have to take it professionally, because guess what? It is business. And then the follow-up is very, very important. That maybe you need to reconvene, rediscuss, review, and move forward again. But the follow-up is everything. And then learning from feedback. If they're not interested, I always ask for feedback too, Jason. But because, like, when you're going through this, as I said, I talk about the layers. You have your process layer, and it's not going to be right the first time. And then you have your, like, how can I be other people centered layer, to make sure that the way you phrase and frame things, it's about helping them. And even when they ask you about you, Jason, when you're asking them about their problems, then they go, tell me about Jason Cooper and what you do. You say those words in how it helps them. It's not about, well, I'm amazing at this. It's like, I support companies' journeys and building sales success, or whatever that is. But it's all about, when you talk about you, it's still about them and how you help them. And that's how you get people interested in you, right? And again, the whole point, Jason, as you said, it's about building that relationship, building that rapport. You need to find synergies with these people, So that the layer of like the human touch, this is where the experience comes along, Jason. So there's layer upon layer when you build it up. It's like peeling back the onions. You have to make sure
Mhm.
every layer is doing its job before you can be like, and I don't like the word guaranteed. I mean by that is when you can walk away knowing that you've done everything you possibly can,
Yeah.
and then it's out of your hands.
Yeah, then it's down to them to
Mm.
make that decision, good, bad, or indifferent, and it is completely out of your hand. But as long as you know, um, you've have the list of questions that you need to ask, and you make the other person feel good. You know, that we've spoken about likability before. Like as long as there's a human connection there, you build that trust, connection, credibility, like authority in the area that you specialize, and you've educated them in the parts. But there's only so much you can do. You can't do anything else after that. So it's even if you've done everything right, it's some sort of synergy that might not have hit.
Mm.
So sometimes you just have to walk away and go, well, I didn't hit that part. And it happened to me this week. I didn't quite hit the part. I thought I did an incredible job. And then a separate conversation. I had 4 or 5 conversations which were really good. But
Yeah.
one, I go, well, if I can give myself some feedback or ask the client and ask the customer, what was their experience of me? And what could I do to improve on what I've done rather than it being in my head? Because we want to learn and we want to grow. And as companies and as organizations, it's for us to work out the best, easiest buying experience. So to help them buy from us as opposed to us to sell to them.
Yeah, and it is, Jason, and the whole experience, it's all about um like getting emotionally attached with these people, right? And what I mean by that is that people, there's always the logic and the emotional element to things. Logic has to be off the table. Your product or service has to satisfy their needs.
Yeah.
And then it's the emotional element where that they make a buying decision in your favor as opposed to the competition, right? So how do you build that emotional connection? How you bring them on that journey? And that's all about making sure you're other people centered, that you tell them a story that they can resonate with, that you understand, talk like you understand, that you've been there, you empathize with them, and you have the solution and the potential of how things will look when you choose it. And I
Mm.
always like to say, Jason, as well, is don't go for the big fancy gold platinum service with them. Start small. And here's the other thing, Jason, give people the power. Give
Mhm.
them the power. Give them an easy out. Don't just say, like people talk about scarcity, and yeah, there's a place for scarcity, right? However, when I talk to people, if I'm saying, look, I'd love to have 5 minutes of your time on a call, you stop the call in 4 minutes 55
Mhm.
seconds. You make sure and you tell them, look, I promised only 5 minutes. We're at that. Maybe we can, if you're interested, we can continue on a meeting in person or over Zoom. So you have to match their expectations and beat them all the time. And then you're giving them easy ways out. And then at the end of it, Jason, like I always say, instead of going for the big kill of a project, say, look, let's just try something small
Yep.
and then pilot. See, and I always say that to like focus on the working relationship,
Mhm.
because something small for me is just another opportunity to build a rapport,
Yep.
build like strengthen that relationship. Every touch point is about your goal should be to improve the relationship, not to get the products or service over the line. That will be the consequence if you do everything else right.
Yeah, and the pilots is a really interesting thing. When I worked as a consultant into a company about 10 years ago, we were doing people tracking and all of that. And what we would offer initially, the conversation, but then we'd offer a pilot. Okay, we'll install it for free just to see what it's like for you. Then over time, you can build in that collaboration as well. Well, if that works, how would you like to branch it out to other? Are you happy with what actually happened? Is everyone else happy in the organization, and so on and so forth? So regardless of what you do, a pilot, a test, or if it's ourselves, is to offer an hour call or an hour's training on particular part of a process or a coaching. I've done coaching for free for 30 minutes so that they can see, I call it a chemistry test as well. If they like me, and I've made some improvements for them. So that chemistry is really good. And I did that quite recently. I did 5 chemistry calls. Now I'm working with the CEO and a couple of the core people within the organization, which again, you just have to prove your worth, and they have to trust you and like you, and to see whether you have the right knowledge and the right skill sets to help them, and again, to get what they want. Because nothing about us, we have the skill sets, but it's really for us to get that human connection with the other person.
Well, that's it, Jason. And even when I had my first business, what you said just reminded me of a story there. And I've shared this a few times on our sessions, that part of my sales process, right, or buying experience, was not to make a phone call to, like I was dealing with architects at the time, not to make a phone call to get a meeting just to talk about how amazing my products were. It was just to offer them a complimentary CPD for all the things they needed to know about designing renewable systems into their amazing buildings. And I closed by saying, when would you like to schedule it?
Yep.
And I was above 90% conversions with that. And then when I was delivering the CPD, they didn't just hear about how good my systems were. They saw me in action and my knowledge and my expertise, and I created a really good environment. And then I had possibly 10 leads as opposed to just one. And that's how, again, and I didn't realize when I was trying this, Jason, in the beginning, I was going back to my lean days. How can I add value before the sale? Lean is all about adding value to the customer. And I'm going, can I add value beforehand? And it started working really well, but it's only when I really stepped back and analyzed why it was working well. Again, it goes back to building relationships, getting the opportunity to build relationships. And they were getting something. They weren't just getting a meeting. They were getting knowledge that then they could apply. They were getting value. And I was giving them good value. And people will say, well, if you give them value before the sale, what are you going to offer them? And I say, well, look, if they can see you can give this value before they hire you,
what's it going to be like when they
pay you? You know, and that has worked very well for me, Jason, over the years, and my clients when I help them as well.
I think that's a really good process, and it's something that a lot more people should be doing. It's even the stuff that we do on LinkedIn and other social media, and maybe in the real world, is people can actually see what you're writing stuff, or you're doing a video or whatever it might be. They can hear and see what you're like. If they like you, excellent, they're going to buy. We do this because we do this every week because we want to make sure that we give some good actionable points so people can go, well, I'm going to take that and I'm going to use it for myself. And then they might contact either of us. But what we want to do, the bigger picture, is to give value forward, because we're both experts at what we do and we both love what we do. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it at all. So we want to make sure that everything that we do is value forward. And I like to say value forward is giving something for free, not expecting anything in return. Inadvertently, hopefully we will, but it is the trust, connection, and the authority in what we do and what we say, and help people buy.
But that's exactly, it's about helping them, Jason. And again, if you help the people who are in the marketplace, who love what you do, the consequence will be a relationship going forward. And then that's an opportunity to go to the next level. When you demonstrate now that you placed enough trust in me to give me a chance, and now your goal is to commit to that and then some, and then you prove you can walk the walk, and then you open the gate to go to the next level with that client. So with I always say it's value-based experiences, Jason, when it comes to building them. And yes, it's a longer game. Yes, it'll take a bit longer to get a sale, but your conversions will be drastically improved. So those extra steps will add great value longer term. But people are not always prepared to put that work in, Jason. because they just think, I need to get sales, I need to get more sales, I need to get more sales. The relationship is a longer game, but it's a lot more value adding for the long term.
Yeah, yeah, and it can help you get to the bigger whales as well, as opposed to the minnows, which probably take a lot more time. But the bigger fish out there will be better for everyone. And again, it's relationships in that organization, and every day we chip away at it to build those effective relationships going forward. And something that I even did today was communicating with people that I worked with over 10 years ago. And let's set up a coffee. Let's have a chat. How are the family? How are the kids? And how's everything else? And I worked with them over 10 years ago. So it is about bringing it back in just to have that conversation, but it is a conversation. And if it goes any further, happy days.
Absolutely, Jason. Absolutely. And look, I know we're coming
Yep.
up in time here. As always, we can talk for ages on these subjects. And I was going to say talk for Ireland because we're in Ireland, because I'm Irish and you're not. But anyway, but you can talk for England, I can talk for
Yep.
Ireland, right? And we could talk all day about these subjects. But look, thanks anyone who tuned in. And if you have any questions, we'd love to answer any questions
Absolutely.
you have. And in the meantime, this is Shay Lynch and Jason Cooper saying thanks for listening. We hope to see you again, the same channel, talking all things the soft and system side to sales. You're supposed to say goodbye, Jason.